Hey guys, it's me again, picking up where I left off with the story of how I met my husband back in the 80s and maybe finding some insight as to how you might be able to do a similar thing for yourself, regardless of the stage that you're in. And I was telling you, one, how I had decided that I would work on myself, improve myself a little bit, become intentional, not date anybody that wasn't marriage material for me, go to God because I'm a Christian. And I wrote a letter telling him what I wanted. I've been trying to get my youngest son to do this, but he will not listen. But I told you, I said, that's how I got your dad. And I listed all of the things that were deal breakers for me, not little superficial things like the type of car he drove, because truth be told, when I met my husband in college, he was poorer than I was, if that were even possible. I didn't expect it to be. He was a college student playing soccer, and surprisingly back then there were no NIL deals or anything like that, and you couldn't even have anyone give you any kind of money without it voiding your scholarship. So by the time Christmas break rolled around, he had no money at all and actually needed money to try to come home. And that was the first time that I ever loaned a man money. I offered we had been dating as friends mainly, or spending time as friends for a while, because there was a girlfriend at home that he had decided to get back with, and so we remained friends while he resolved that situation. And so but I was laying in wait and hoping, because he wasn't married and he was a really good friend or whatever, and so it made me respect him too, that he was honest, because that was one of the things on my list, that you needed to be honest no matter how much it hurt my feelings or whatever. And it was funny when he told me, he said, I just want to tell you something. I didn't know if it would annoy you or whatever, but I'm going to get back with my girlfriend at home. And so he says, I hope we can still be friends. And I said, yeah, we can. It's not like I love you or anything. Lies. I actually did. And I had been practicing his last name. And then he even had the nerve to ask me what was my last name again, after he had known me for all of that time. So it was comedy, but I continued the friendship, and thinking if something was meant to happen, that it would. And so and I don't know why this is always crooked on camera, but anyway, so back to the loaning of the money. He had mentioned that he was trying to get home, and he was scraping up his little pennies, like I scraped up my pennies too. And I said, oh hey, I'll have some money after I sell my books back to the bookstore and get some money, so I could loan you $100 if that would help. And so he said, if you really don't mind, and he took it. And rule number one, if he didn't pay me back my $100 by the time that he said he would, we wouldn't be here now. So praise the Lord, when he came back, he gave me my $100. So we were good, and we continued on. Long story short, he broke up with the girlfriend, and after the normal course of life, we lived happily ever after. We dated for 4 years, got engaged. Oh, and speaking of that, as a part of being intentional, I had to, realize that I wanted to be married by 25, like I had mentioned in the previous video. And so after a while, we had been dating, and it's so funny, he lived in the DC area, and he said he wanted to come home and see, how we felt or whatever. And I kind of like pushed his hand, and I came here for a visit. He thought like 2 or 3 days, like I had been, but I brought everything that I had with me after 3 days after I graduated from college. And he wound up having to find me a place to live with his old soccer coach, where I rented out a room in his townhouse. And because he said, well, when are you going back? And I'm like, I'm so naive. I'm like, never. I came here to find a job and to establish a life, because I just knew that he loved me and that he had made provision. He had not. He was living at home with his mom. He was working, raising money, trying to buy a house and everything. And so I kind of pushed his hand and moved here. Fortunately, he loved me because he made provision. And then, so like I said, we continued dating, and he kept like putting up these little barriers and things, like saying, I really want to buy a house. Do you want to buy a house? If so, I'm trying to raise X dollars. Can you come up with half? And I was like, oh yeah, bet I can do that. And so I wound up finding an IT project that helped me to raise my half in less than a year. And so that worked well. So you're not getting rid of me that fast. And then while we were saving our money, I remember we were at a club or something, and he said, why don't you go get me a drink or something? I said, I'm not getting you any drink. What are you talking about? There's no ring on this finger. And he said, do you want there to be? And I said, of course I do. And then he says, okay, well, we'll pick it out. And then that weekend, we went and picked out my ring. So that's how simple it was. It's like either you love me or you don't. Either you want to get married or you don't. It didn't take, 5 years. It didn't take 10 years. It didn't take me having children for him, or buying our house together before he realized that he wanted to marry me. So that's the other thing. Be intentional, but also be clear about what you want, like I said about writing the letter, but also don't settle for anything less than you want. I hate it when I hear women talking about, well, I think we're in a relationship, we're in a situationship. If I cursed, I'd be like Kevin Samuels and probably say the F word to the situationship, but I don't curse. But forget the situationship, forget we're seeing how we feel, we're working towards that. Don't let any man string you along, because men seem to be notorious for stringing us along when they're not sure if they found the one. But have you ever noticed that when a guy breaks up with a woman, that you might see him engaged less than a year later and married maybe a year later, whereas he had been with someone 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and it wasn't with the excuse of being in college. My husband and I, we were in college, and we were, trying to figure out, I lived in Augusta, he lived in the DC area. We're trying to figure out where we were going to wind up. I already knew I was going to be in DC because I had been practicing his last name 2 weeks after I knew him. But all of those situations demonstrate how intentional I was, how I knew what I wanted. I was very clear on that. I talked to God about it, and then I didn't settle for less than I wanted. I didn't allow him to waste the best years of my life, stringing me along, knocking me up, using me up. So that's the purpose of these videos. I'm so tired of seeing young women especially allowing men to do that. And especially if you're 30 and you're with someone that seems to fit into any of those categories, I implore you, urge you, and encourage you to stop that nonsense today and, figure out the fastest way to get on the course to finding your Mr. Right, like I did. So, okay, that's all I have for now. But next time I want to talk about how corny it's not such a bad thing. You can ask Sierra with her Russell Wilson, but I also have some insight about the corniness as well, and that'll be the topic of my next video. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about what I shared here or in previous videos, you can feel free to let me know. But I gotta get back to work and finish up before I sign off later today. But thanks for stopping by, and I look forward to sharing more tips with you in the very near future. Until then, have a good one.